On today's show,
I was emotional a lot of IEP meetings because I think there's a raw honesty that you
yeah,
experience when they tell you this is what where your child is at.
yeah,
And I think I would say to parents, it's okay, you know, that you know your child more than they do, right? This
yeah,
is an assessment.
mm-hmm,
And so every time after every IEP, I cry my eyes out.
yeah,
And then I say, you know what, but this is my child, right? This is a child that I'm raising. And
yeah,
so they're in school for, the time they're in school, but they're home with me. So this assessment is not a value statement of my child, and what they can do in the future, what they're capable of, or their
yeah.
potential.
Welcome to Education Today. I'm your host, Solanke. I spent 15 years in the secondary classroom teaching English, reading, and social studies. I've also been on the other side as a parent of 3 children who have completed the formal schooling years of kindergarten through 12th grade and are now in the college and career stage. Now I'm here to have conversations with teachers, administrators, school staff, students, and parents about all things education. Join me as I cover current topics in education from preschool through to college, career, and beyond. Welcome, viewers, to today's show. Our topic today is how parents navigate the educational system when they have a kid with special needs. My guest is Stephania Everett. Welcome to the show, Stephania.
Thank you. Happy to
Steph-
be here.
Thank you. Stephania is joining us from Maryland. She is married and she has 2 children, 2 boys, and one of them has a lot of special needs. Would you be comfortable telling us about those, Stephania?
Yeah, absolutely. So my youngest, who is 6, his name is Langston. He has the George syndrome, which is a deficit in, let me see, how do I, so Down syndrome is an addition of chromosomes, and George is a deficit in chromosomes. So he's
Oh,
missing chromosomes, yeah. And so
oh,
that affects him in pretty much every aspect, in speech, cognitively, and also with his immune system too, it's behind. And also his stature. Normally, the George children have either a heart condition or a cleft palate or both.
hmm
But thankfully, Langston didn't get that part of it.
oh, good.
But he did get the lagging in his immune system and all the other things. But usually, too, the George is paired with autism, and
Yeah.
so when he was about 2 years old, he was diagnosed with autism as well.
Oh, okay. So, how old was Langston when you left Florida for Maryland?
He was, gosh, I want to say he was 5.
He was 5. Okay, so that's actually school age. So,
Yeah,
did you have to try to navigate the educational system for him in Florida in terms of preschool?
yeah, which was way easier.
Oh, really? That's
Yes.
interesting.
I mean, my experience is it's not really much experience. It's only been a couple of years, but in a big city, I'm finding out it's way more difficult.
Yeah,
Where we're at in Florida, we were in St. Pete, which is small town, but kind of like a city feel. Everything was a lot easier.
yeah.
Less red tape, less bureaucracy. I was honestly a lot of the help that he got came to me.
Oh, wow.
Right after he got out of, he went to all Children's Hospital for the first 3 years of his life.
Yeah,
And he got all his therapies through there. And the transition from all Children's to school, um, that was already being taken care of. So they're already Fiddlers, I think is the name of the group. They already
yes.
connected with me through the hospital. And
Yeah.
so I had his first IEP meeting right after he got out of the hospital, probably that summer, I think.
Oh,
And
wow.
then right there, they found a school, and it just went pretty quick.
Oh, wow.
And they found the best school for him too. And so he went to school, and the resources were there, and it was great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So even his social security, everything just kind of came to us, which, this was, my second child. So Timothy wasn't at that time, had special needs. So I didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah.
His special needs, all of his issues started at 9 months. And so his doctor missed everything till a year old.
Oh, wow.
And so then, we're focused on him being in the hospital. He had to have surgery and all that stuff. So I had no idea. I couldn't have any close friends that had children with special needs. So I had no idea how to navigate anything.
Yeah.
But again, they were the partnerships. They just came to me and they're like, oh, Fiddler is available for him and he can do this and we can do that. Here's some meetings. Here's his IEP. And I was just like, wow. So I just went to the meetings and attended, and he got into a really good school.
Yeah. What type of school setting was he put into?
He was I wanted him because he was nonverbal and he was like small stature. At that point he was so small he still looked like a baby, and so I wanted him to be in a smaller classroom because usually they want the children to be mainstream, like a part of a mainstream classroom. But I wanted him to be in a smaller classroom, and so they told me the option was that because he wasn't speaking, there was the option of him adding to it an intellectual disability, even though we just didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because he was still young. And I was like, okay, let me do that. Let's do the paperwork for that. They're like, if you do the paperwork for that, then he's guaranteed to be in a smaller classroom. And so he had been in a smaller classroom up until first grade. He's in first grade now, and so he's both. So he's in a mainstream classroom, but also engaging with his peers. But also he has time away from the classroom to be one-on-one with his teacher.
Yeah.
And case manager. So, but yeah, he was in I think his classrooms were probably 4 to 6 children up until first grade.
That's wonderful. And then you transitioned. You moved up to Maryland, and you said Florida was easier. So that means I'm guessing that Maryland was a more of a challenge.
Definitely, I think with Maryland, it depends on the county you're in.
Yeah.
And so we were initially in Prince George's County. And where we were living, they're very big on the child going to the school in their neighborhood, neighborhood school. And the school that was in our neighborhood that had the program for Langston didn't have much resources. Mm-hmm. And so I went into the classroom the first day for orientation. I was just like, the toys were shabby, and I was just like, wow, I was just like, what's going on? So I didn't say anything to the teachers, but I called. We had a meeting. I think it was an IEP? I don't know I think it was like a pre-meeting or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I noticed the toys are pretty shabby,
Mm-hmm.
and just other things that I've noticed about just like the cleanliness of stuff. And they're like, oh, Miss Everett, yeah, we can take care of that. That's no problem. And I was like, man, what if I didn't say anything? How many parents' kids have to endure these shabby toys when you can just order them, So, of course, right? Like money for schools and resources is a thing, right? It's difficult. But I think, me being one parent that was like, hey, these toys look about 10 years old. And, the principal saying, oh, we can order new toys just like that. I was just like, so there's a lot of things I remember saying to them, like, concerning Langston that, the rest of the children got to benefit. And, I tried to go to a different school, but at that time, the better schools were not in that county. So we kind of had to stay. Yeah. But the teachers and the assistant teachers were fantastic. They were great. Good. And so because they were so awesome, I was like, okay, we can bear with this. Langston was like super happy when he came home. And so I was like, okay, we'll stay there. And nothing against the school, just for me, if I'm able to do it and pull it off for free, I want my child to go to a good school.
Yeah.
And so we looked around and we're like, okay, are there better schools for Langston? And so we looked at Howard County, and so it was one of the really good schools, one of the really good counties that had better schools. And so we moved here last year, right? But in the summer, And so so he's been going there for first grade, and they literally had to build. So they had stuff there for special needs kids, but Langston's multiple disabilities.
Yeah.
And so initially, the principal was very excited to have Langston. He was like, because I was telling them, I was like, look, this is, because they wanted him to be a part of a mainstream class. I was like, I'm used to my child being in a small classroom. So he's nonverbal, right? So he needs,
he's still nonverbal?
He's still nonverbal.
Okay.
And so I was like, he needs a couple of eyes watching him.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's not using the potty on his own yet. He still needs a diaper change. So I laid out everything for them. I'm like, look, this is what you're dealing with when it comes to Langston's care and education. And so, and the principal's like, I feel confident, even though we don't have multiple disability children, but we definitely will be able to give Langston what he needs. I was like, oh, great. And so about 4 months in, I got a call from his case manager at the time, and she was like, this is like before an IEP meeting, and she was like, "Mom, I'm going to be honest with you. We don't have everything we need for Langston." And I was just like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, he needs a lot, and the amount of care that he needs, we don't have, like the teachers for it, and so where there's things there's things that we're trying, new things that we're trying, but ultimately he needs more, and there are other schools, that can, benefit him." And so I was like, "Well, thank you for the heads up." She's like, "They're not going to talk about this at the IEP. They're going to talk about, like kind of, oh, what's working now and kind of like moving forward. But I wanted you to know that it's, he needs more." I was like, "Okay, thank you for the heads up." And so we had the IEP meeting. And so, I have this information. And so we go through like, "Oh yeah, Winston's doing this, and he's doing great, and we're going to try this." And, they hired somebody else on the team, and I was like, "Okay, this sounds wonderful, but I need you to be honest with me. Can you handle Langston for the rest of the year?" Because again, he needs more than the typical children that you guys have that are special needs. He needs more, right? He can't say, "I need this or that." You kind of have to really pay attention to him to see what he needs, And so, sometimes he'll just walk away. You have to bring him back, and you have to redirect, do all those things. So it's a couple more extra steps with him. I'm like, I'm like, "Look, I understand you guys are on the field. Like, I care about your well-being as teachers, right? And also my son. And so if you feel like it's too much, I need to know that as a parent, so I know how to move forward." I'm like, and they're like, "Oh, Miss Everett, we think we can do it. We're glad you asked that question. Like, he does have a lot of needs, but we think we can do it. We hired a couple people, and so we've made some changes, and we think we can do it." So the principal was at that meeting, but everyone else was that, would be honest with me, right? So, and I was just like, "Are you sure?" Because I'm like, I don't want it to be, at that time we had it, I think it was like November or December, I think we had the meeting. I'm like, I don't want it to be like March and you're coming to me and saying, "Oh, we actually don't have enough." You know what I mean? We actually can't do it. Because one, that's going to be tough on him, the transition, to try to find another school last minute, or, so I need to know as soon as possible, can he, can you guys do this, And so they're like, "Yes, we think we can. We have, we have everything that we need and we're doing." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "All right." And so that was the IEP meeting. And then I would say like a few weeks passed and I was just feeling still a little bit uneasy about it. And so I called the principal. I was like, "Hey," I was like, "I need you to be honest with me. Can you can you guys really do this?" I'm like, initially you had this vision for him and I loved it. Right. As a parent, I was like, "This is awesome. Like, he can benefit from being in mainstream, interacting with his peers. Like, he may even start verbalizing, might vocalizing." And so I was like, "Real talk, he's a black man." So I was like, "Real talk, can you do this?" And he was just like, "You know what?" He was like, "This is the thing. With Howard County, they want to be absolutely certain that we can't do it. If they feel we can, they want to keep him there." And so he was like, "If you want to remove him, some parents get lawyers involved." I'm like, I can't afford lawyers, you know? And so, but I just, I just want to know, can you, he's like, "Miss Everett, honestly, it's a lot of work, but we're doing it." And so, but Howard County won't step in and take him out of the school because until they feel like we absolutely can't, they're going to say we can't. And I was like, "Okay." So I got off the phone. I was just like, "Okay, well, let this sit for a little bit." And so, I think it was probably the beginning of this month, I put in LinkedIn in a trial, to get a device where he can communicate, because he's really good with technology. And so I was like, "Oh," because in his when he went to at All Children's, they had a device where he would say, "I want to play," or "I want the truck," or whatever. And so he was really excelling in it. So I'm like, okay, intellectually, there's things happening. You know what I mean? He just he's unable to get it out verbally. And so I was like, "Can you put him in this trial?" They're like, "Absolutely, we absolutely can." And what's important about the IEP is that his previous school, which had the, lack of resources, they're like, "Mom, we don't have this, we can't do it, but we'll make sure to put it on his IEP, and you make sure you bring it up to remind them that it's on there so they know to put him in the trial.
Yeah.
And so they put on his IEP. And so when I went to this new school, I was like, hey, did you guys notice that, the trial, can he get in the trial? They're like, absolutely. And
Oh,
so January, the speech therapist came back to me and says, Miss Everett, Langston has qualified for a
wow.
device. Now, this
This
program is
month?
$30,000. Go ahead.
This month? This January?
This month. Yeah, at the beginning of
Okay.
this month.
Uh-huh.
So this program is $30,000. I tried to go find it for myself. They're like, we don't sell it to people, we sell it to schools and hospitals. So he qualifies for it. And they told us, they're like, they're going to train me and his dad on it,
Wow.
So advocacy is so essential. You can't just rely, the school's going to do their part.
Yeah.
But then the parent has to take the extra mile to really pay attention to that IEP.
Yeah.
And to really like highlight things that you're concerned about, that, you want to know if they're doing. And so now he's going to get a device. And so the trial is over, I think, in the next month. And so they'll have us come in and train us on it. So, which is, again, early on, I was advocating for this early on, right? But again, it's not something they just give to children. They have to make sure the child qualifies for it.
Yeah.
And Langston does.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. So, throughout all your experiences, what would you say needs to be improved in the system to make it easier for parents to navigate and to be able to get their students the help they need?
That's a great question. A lot of IEP stuff is really, it's a lot of reading, right?
Yeah.
Like, not every parent's gonna sit here and read through this stuff.
Yeah.
I think they need to know like the main things that they, so for me, I'll speed read through everything.
Yeah.
But I'll ask, okay, what are the main things that we're doing here? What is the meeting about? And also too, I think when they ask the parents, like, what are their concerns, for the parent to really take time, because a parent may have a concern and forget about it, or think that, okay, well, the teachers are doing what they have to do, so I'm good. It's like, no, always ask questions, because one, they need you to ask questions, because if they're missing something, or if there's something that they're not looking at or seeing or paying attention to, you can actually say, hey, what about this, and this?
Yeah.
I haven't had a bad experience yet. I think I've had some IEP meetings where the therapists there were kind of quiet.
Yeah.
And I had to be like, hey, so what's going on with that? They'll kind of say, oh, this is what's happening, and here's the update. But I'm like, so then what about this? Or I would always also say too, if they're seeing things happen at home that are like beneficial, that they're seeing like the results of their therapy, say that too. Because I would notice, oh, Langston he's climbing the stairs on his own. He wasn't doing that before. Like, this is awesome. Like, thank you. Like, this is really helpful. We can see the results at home. It's important for them to know that as well.
Yeah.
And so, I think asking for kind of like, okay, what is this about? Because it can send you paperwork all day, but it's a lot. But to ask them, okay, what are the things they can discuss in the beginning? Oh, we're going to talk about this. But again, like, I think for the parent to ask, like, what exactly are we talking about?
Yeah.
Because you can get lost in all the information too.
Yes, definitely.
But also let them know what's working at home.
It's good advice. So besides getting parents to make sure parents ask questions, and having parents, link in what's happening at home to what's happening at school, do you have any other advice for parents starting out on this journey?
It's a lot. I think for my journey with my child with special needs, I was emotional in a lot of IEP meetings, because I think there's a raw honesty that you experience when they tell you this is what's where your child is at.
Yeah.
And I think I would say to parents, it's okay. They your child more than they do, right?
Yeah.
This is an assessment. And so every time after every IEP, I cry my eyes out.
Yeah.
And then I say, you know what, but this is my child.
Yeah.
Right? This is a child that I'm raising.
Yeah.
And so they're in school for, the time they're in school, but they're home with me. So this assessment is not a value statement of my child.
Yeah.
And what they can do in the future, what they're capable of, or their potential.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Okay. That's good advice. I've been in a few IP meetings myself with my kids, and it is, even though my kids don't have special needs to the extent that Langston does, it is emotional, and it does feel like a judgment. Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you. So, is Langston still in a mainstream classroom?
He is. he is, one of the stories they told me about him in class is that the kids want to interact because he's kind of like a loner a little bit, so he'll go, play on his own, and they'll go, "Hey, Langston," and they'll want to play with him, interact with him, and so they'll grab his hand and take him around, and the teacher's like, "No, you cannot grab Langston's hand. You have to ask him if it's okay." But I can just see the kids are like, they want to play with him, so they're like taking his hand and taking him places. And so, and they're like, "No, you can't just take his hand." And I like that because, it's important, even though he's nonverbal, consent is still important, right? And so they can't just grab him and take him places. And so the fact that they even acknowledged that, I thought was fantastic. I was like, you don't think about that. Oh, he's nonverbal, so let me just take him places. They're just like, no, you have to ask. Whether he responds or not, that's okay. Then just don't. But always ask. Listen, is it okay if we go over here? Can we go over there? So, because they really, and I think it's been good for Langston because they also told me that he'll go up to the students randomly and just hug them. He's not a big, hugger unless he initiates it. And so I thought that was so sweet. I'm like, oh my gosh, Langston is hugging his classmates. Oh wow. He doesn't do that. And so I thought that was so sweet because, the social skills are important too. Yes. And that's something that he can learn. Yes, being around other special needs kids, but also being around, quote unquote normal kids too. Yes. So that's been good.
Oh, that's good. Well, it sounds like his teachers are doing a phenomenal job.
They're great.
It sounds like he's thriving and doing well. Yes. And it sounds like you as a mom are doing an outstanding job to advocate for your child.
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experiences with what it's like to go through the system with a kid with a lot of special needs. And I believe that this program, this episode, will help a lot of parents out there.
I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Education Today. We'll be back next time with more current topics on all things education. In the meantime, you can email any questions or comments you have about the show to edtodaypodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you are listening so we can continue to expand our reach. We are listener supported, so if you're able to make a small monthly donation, you can do so by clicking the Support This Podcast link at the bottom of the show notes. Check out my blog for more about my experiences as a classroom teacher at medium.com/@SOCO. That's medium.com/@SOHKOR. You can also find me on Instagram at SOCO_rights. That's SOHKOR_rights. See you next time, and thank you again for listening.